First up is Representative Hollins with House File 4938. Uh-oh.
We're good.
Okay, good.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, committee members. I would move House File 4938 be laid over for consideration.
Great. And I see you also have an author's amendment coded to A1.
That's correct.
Representative Hollins moves the A1 to get the bill in the shape to discuss it. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Motion prevails and the amendment is adopted. Representative Hollins, go ahead and tell us about your bill.
Thank you so much, Chair. Thank you, committee members. I am so pleased to present House File 4938, which is an RDA request to fund an anaerobic digester to process food waste in Minnesota. As you may note, the author's amendment clarifies the location of the digester and expands to allow waste from counties outside of the metro area and removes the funding specifics. We understand that $30 million from the RDA may not be possible to achieve this year. This is a large project with an overall price tag of $100 million, and we are grateful for any funding that this committee can provide to move us towards that goal. The timing of this project is absolutely critical. If we can get shovels in the ground this year, we unlock $30 million of federal tax credits that expire at the end of 2024. You'll see in your packet a number of letters of support from our partners in this effort, and I would like to cede the rest of my time to my testifiers.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Welcome to committee. Ms. Reinhardt, go ahead and introduce yourself and proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Victoria Reinhardt. I'm on the Ramsey County Board of Commissioners, and I'm here today on behalf of Ramsey County and the Ramsey Washington Recycling and Energy Board. This project is an exciting next step in a multi-year effort to get organics out of our landfills and move it up the waste management hierarchy. I have been known to get very excited about trash, and I really am excited about this because of what we can possibly do. The Recycling and Energy Board is the joint powers board of Washington and Ramsey counties, recently launched an innovative food scrap pickup program to ensure that all households in the two counties have the option to recycle their food scraps easily from home, and you'll have other testifiers that will go further into that. Organics, such as discarded food scraps, make up over 20% of our collected trash. It is imperative that we address this to both move towards Minnesota's 75% recycling goal and to reduce the greenhouse gases created by landfills. A key limiting factor has been the lack of sufficient infrastructure to process organics into beneficial products. Composting is the traditional method, but anaerobic digestion has the added benefit of producing biogas, which can be used to produce renewable natural gas. And I'd like to turn it over to Commissioner Miron for his testimony.
Wonderful. Mr. Miron, Commissioner for Washington County, welcome to committee. Please state your name for the record and proceed.
Thank you, Chair. I am Commissioner Fran Miron here today on behalf of Washington County and the Recycling and Energy Board. The Recycling and Energy Board has entered into a 20-year contract agreement to provide organics to DEMCON, a facility for processing by anaerobic digestion. And we're committed to pursuing the next level in waste management and renewable energy production for Minnesota. Investment in this facility will produce 75,000 tons per year of new organics processing capacity in Minnesota. The facility will produce 170,000 decatherms or 1.7 million therms, enough renewable natural gas to heat approximately 4,500 homes annually. This will result in a significant reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, almost 32,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide annually as compared to if food waste went to a landfill. This is an equivalent carbon emission avoided from 7,600 cars. I'm going to hand it over to Bill Keegan, who is, with your permission, Chair, who is a representative from DEMCON that's here to share some testimony as well. Thank you.
Commissioner. Up next is Bill Keegan, DEMCON Companies. Welcome to committee. Please state your name for the record and proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Representatives. Bill Keegan, President of DEMCON Companies. I want to just briefly tell you a little bit about who DEMCON Companies is and then the technology that's being proposed as part of this private-public partnership, and really convey how we are at a unique time for Minnesota to manage our waste differently, right? And really have a paradigm shift here where we can leverage federal dollars and public-private partnerships and private investments to move us to the next level of waste management. Demcon is a third-generation family-owned company. We're located down in Louisville Township, which is adjacent to Shakopee, Minnesota, southwest suburbs there. And we are in the waste processing, recycling, and disposal business. And something that's unique is we are a third-generation, initially a disposal company that embraces landfill diversion, right? Moving materials to higher and better uses. We have what we call our environmental campus in Shakopee. Maybe some of you have been there and seen it. But it includes processing of construction demolition materials, your materials that are curbside recyclables, processing of shingles, wood materials, metals, and others. And then hopefully soon to be processing food waste into renewable natural gas, which is this project. The project is for an anaerobic digester, and just to kind of simplify that to terms that make sense, I think, is thinking about it like your stomach. You put food in, and you get liquids, gases, and solids out. This is the way it works. And so the gases are renewable natural gas. The liquids get reincorporated back into the process, and the solids get turned into biochar through a biochar process, which is just high temperature. There is a slide on here that I can pull up, but in interest of time, I want to show you what this looks like. Is that working? That's project location. That is what the anaerobic digester looks like. It's a fairly large facility, about 7 acres. That big bubble thing is where the renewable natural gas is stored, and it connects to the grid. The biochar that's produced can be used for soil amendments and can be used for remediation projects and also for carbon sequestration, right? It is a modular design, so it can be expanded as interest in programs grow. It's currently being built for 70,000 tons, 75,000 tons per year, and it can be expanded in 35,000 ton increments. The unique part about this is we can prove out this technology, and it could be replicated elsewhere in Minnesota. So it's really paving the way to move ourselves to a new way of managing waste. Finally, I guess it's important to convey that this is a critical time. We've got federal policy and local policy all converging at this time with the Inflation Reduction Act. There's a 30% tax credit for this project that you've heard mentioned today already. That is uniquely available, but the project has to start before the end of the year or that expires. So we lose on that opportunity as Minnesota to get $30 million of federal money here to help us move to this next level. In addition, we as Demcon are putting up $40 million towards this project of private money. We also have our Natural Gas Innovation Act locally that is supporting this project, and you can see that from some of the letters of support in your packets. So finally, just in closing, I think this is a unique opportunity for Minnesota, and I appreciate your time and consideration of this testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Keegan. Appreciate that. And before I turn it over to committee members to ask questions, I have one quick question, and that is if either Ramsey County or Washington County are putting any money into this project, and so I'd be interested to hear about their financial commitment to the project.
We have, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. We have put in $41 million into the facility, our facility at the Recycling and Energy Center, and that is to basically the anaerobic digester, or the product that comes in. We are doing this, we're providing bags, 6-gallon or 13-gallon bags, on a voluntary basis. Right now, it's in 4 cities in the 2 counties, but it's going to go both counties wide. And you take your food scraps, you put them in there, you wrap it, you close it, it goes into the trash. We have robotic arms that pull it out, and we'll put it into this facility. And that, the enhancements there for the pulling out recyclables and the organics was $41 million.
Great, thank you. Commissioner, I see you're standing. Maybe you want our other Washington commissioner welcome back to the table. Thanks for providing a little bit more information about that.
Madam Chair, Fran Miron again. If I may, We've also signed agreements with Demcon for delivery of food scraps or food waste to support their business model. And with that, the counties, through the recycling and energy budget, will be providing tip fees at their location to cover costs associated with their operations. But specifically, what we're asking for here is capital investment, not necessarily operational costs, but the counties do have a commitment through the Recycling and Energy Board with Demcon.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate that clarification. First on the list for questions, Representative Hornstein.
Thanks so much, and Commissioner Reinhardt, I share your passion for proper disposal of municipal solid waste, and I'm very pleased that you're working on this. We had a hearing last week or 2 weeks ago in Environment on a PCA proposal on composting, which wasn't quite ready. We realized that. That's what hearings are about sometimes. You just throw an idea out there. But I really appreciate this because this is 1/3 of the waste stream. And as you pointed out, if we're going to get to the 75% by 2030, which is a bill I worked on in 2014, we're absolutely going to have to deal with food waste. There is one piece in the bill that is sort of like the waste management hierarchy for compost. And so at the beginning, it's reducing it, and then we have anaerobic digestion, towards the end. But my question is, you had talked about banning food waste from landfills, which I like a lot. I think it should also be banned from incinerators as well. But is this something that you feel the state should be looking at? I think that was part of, not the incinerator part, but the landfill part was, I think, part of Hennepin County's legislative agenda. Or do you feel that this can be done on a county-by-county basis? Because if it is statewide, then we should really be looking at it and having, all of that great coalition that's been coming together around SCORE, work on that type of bill. So interested in your thoughts.
Commissioner Reinhardt?
Thank you, Representative and Madam Chair. Well, first of all, as you know, the 75% recycling goal by 2030 is in the metro area. It's 35% outstate. As far as banning, there have been, over the years, with the Waste Management Act and the hierarchy, there have been a number of bans that have been put in place. But what you really need to do is to have opportunities to have it addressed in a different way. So I'm not sure, it shouldn't be in there. That's all there is to it, and we're doing what we can to take it out. But if you don't have, for example, if we don't have this system in place, we're not going to be able to get it done. And so what do we do with it? Well, we compost it right now. I mean, we don't put it in the landfills. But I think that it has to be both. Simply banning something, I don't think, is going to get you where you want to be, but you have to show some way of getting there as well. So personally, and I'm not speaking for Ramsey County or Recycling and Energy Board, but yeah, I don't think it should be allowed in the landfill. It's a negative, and if you are putting it into a processing facility, it's a negative BTU. I mean, we're actually trying to do something positive with it here. So I think moving things so that you can actually implement them is probably the most important thing.
Looks like Commissioner Myron had something he wanted to say as well before going back to
If I might just add, Madam Chair, Representative, processing municipal solid waste, recycling and doing the right thing is always more costly than landfilling. And I believe, at least in the case of Ramsey and Washington counties and the Recycling and Energy, which is a joint powers board that we created here a number of years ago to manage municipal solid waste, we are committed. And aside from, creating more rules and regulations, incenting the work that we want to do, we think is the way to go. It's expensive to do, as I pointed out, but, providing those incentives, and in this case, the requests that we're making, we believe is going to help us get there. And we believe that we have the opportunity to set the example for the state of Minnesota in how to manage municipal solid waste. And we believe we've been doing that with the work that we've done already.
Representative Hornstein.
Just a quick follow-up, more of a statement than a question, but, I think folks know this, but it's worth repeating. To have organics again, 1/3 of the waste stream in a landfill, this is, this is where we get the methane, and, which is, the most potent greenhouse gas. So that's reason number one to get it out. Reason number two, if you're looking at an incinerator, it's not all wet waste, but, most of it is. And it doesn't make sense to me to have that in that type of facility either. So, I think first we reduce the amount of organics that we have, and then there's a few other, hopefully we'll get this in the environment bill, but there's a few other things in the composting hierarchy that we're working on, but this is part of it. And so, hopefully we at the state can figure out ways to fund and incent what you're trying to do.
Commissioner Myron, before we go on. to the
Thank you,
next-
Madam Chair and Representative Hornstein. You mentioned the waste hierarchy, and the waste hierarchy is, as it's traditionally been, the Recycling and Energy Board fully supports that waste hierarchy and recognizes that we can add value to the waste beyond composting, and that is our goal here.
Next question to Representative Carroll.
Thank you, Chair. This question is for both testifiers. I'm from a school district that instituted organics recycling, in all levels of the school. My daughters went through that, and it made a big impact on them, and they were good educators for their parents in terms of waste reduction and recycling. So my question is, have you considered that as a source, from the schools?
Commissioner Reinhardt, are you working your way to the microphone? Stretch.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Representative. Yes, we do need to, there's unfortunately a lot of organic waste that is out there. So absolutely, we would be working with the entities that are producing it in the programs. Composting, that's a great thing to do with it, but we can do more. And so I think that's also an educational opportunity for especially younger folks who are trying to do things better than we did. And I do remember, actually, when recycling, I go way back, but it was, honestly, when we started to do the education at the school level, that's when we got the parents involved.
Commissioner Myron, did you have?
Yeah, I would just add, Commissioner Reinhardt and I are of the same vintage. And, my early learning with respect to environmental responsibility came at the high school level. And so I appreciate what I'm hearing from you. It's still going on, and I think that's important that our schools are doing that. The food scrap pickup program that we have right now is currently available to residential waste collection. Our goal is to expand that program throughout both counties so that it's available to everyone. Right now, it's only available to some of the cities that haul directly to our facility in Newport, which is in the southern part of Washington County. But eventually, that will roll out to all residential property owners, properties within Washington and Ramsey County. And then our goal is to expand that into other areas and hopefully schools.
And I will just maybe say about the question regarding schools, I think my kids, their school partnered with a hog farmer, and all the food scraps went to the hog farmer. So sounds like there'll be competition for school food scraps.
Well,
Representative Carroll, did you have a follow-up?
It's low-hanging fruit, so I'd encourage you to go after it.
Yeah. Next on the list is Representative Kraft.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I think this is great. One of the, as I've looked into this stuff in the past, one of the potential concerns is in how a plant like this is operated, because you are generating methane in a much more renewable way, and in certain instances, methane has been flared from plants like this that can reduce some of a lot of the benefit. So how are you putting in place process so that kind of thing doesn't happen?
Looks like Mr. Keegan is working his way back to the microphone.
Madam Chair, Representative. Yeah, great question, and the facility is totally contained. So I made the analogy about the stomach. The stomach stays closed essentially, and they collect all the gas off of it. So there is no flare on this facility, and there is no off-gassing of that. All of that natural gas is collected and sent to that round vessel that you see, or that dome-shaped thing on there, on the diagram there.
Great. Representative Kraft?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've got a couple more questions, if I may.
Sure.
One is, in the handout, it talks about the potential mitigation solution to PFAS, which I've heard about as well. And so can you talk a little bit about that? Because that sounds like a really potentially interesting side benefit to the approach.
Mr. Keegan?
Absolutely, Madam Chair, Representative. Yeah, the solids that come out of the digester go to a biochar process, which is essentially high temperature with no oxygen, right, or very little oxygen. If you had oxygen, you'd have fire and you'd make ash, but when you don't have oxygen, you make biochar, which is essentially just charcoal that's left. That high temperature and that residence time destroys PFAS, and so there is the opportunity to destroy any PFAS that is in the digestate coming out of the digester, but it's important to note that this facility doesn't generate any PFAS. This is just a receiver of PFAS that might be in our food waste. So we're just accepting food waste to the extent that we all have PFAS in our food waste from packaging or something. Any of that came through the facility would be have an opportunity to be treated with that biochar process because of the temperature.
Representative Kraft?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that's a really interesting side benefit. Last thing is, I do really appreciate the hierarchy. I think these are great solutions. They can turn into maybe less great if you wind up having a situation where you're trying to incent more food waste. So how, because obviously the number one thing you want to do is have less of it. So how are you balancing this kind of a thing where there's going to be more incentive to, because you're going to generate some funds from it, with staying true to the hierarchy?
Mr. Keegan? Or Commissioner Myron?
Madam Chair and Commissioner Reinhardt, I'm sure will be want to respond to this as well, but Representative, we at both counties invest significantly in what's called our joint activities budget, and that is really an educational arm of the work that we do. You know, to go back to the education component that was raised earlier in the question, and you know, how do we instruct, let people know that, you know, they need to reduce the waste that exists and the cost associated with that. And so a lot of the work that the recycling and energy facility does is through those joint activities and just trying to educate and inform the public about the cost of waste and how to avoid that. And that certainly avoidance is, you know, the top area of avoiding waste and going towards zero waste is part of the hierarchy and the goal that we have as both counties in their joint work with the Recycling and Energy Board.
Yeah, and to kind of add on to that, at DEMCON, we're also very supportive of the waste hierarchy. And if you just look at, you know, round numbers, when you talked about capacity and how do you know that we're lacking infrastructure for processing even a fraction of the food waste that we have, right? The metro area might have 2 million tons roughly of MSW. If 20% of that is food waste, that's 400,000 tons of food waste. This facility is 75,000 tons. So we are lacking composting infrastructure. We're lacking anaerobic digester and renewable energy infrastructure. There is a lot of room to still move higher up that hierarchy and divert. This is to try to capture some of the stuff that is in the MSW or in the garbage still.
And it looks like Representative Collins had a response as well.
I just wanted to add on to everything that they've said, which is obviously, right, a third of the waste stream is organics. And the reality, that's why we had the amendment that we had, expanding it to counties outside of the metro area, because there has been interest from some of the other counties about being included in this process. So to my mind, we're not just looking at waste from Ramsey and Washington County, but potentially like being able to take organic waste from other counties that don't have this facility as well and using that. So I think it'd be, what an amazing what an amazing problem to have, that we need to if we get to the point where we need to create more organic waste for this to be profitable, that would be a fantastic problem. I don't foresee that happening, but I appreciate the question, Representative Kraft.
Anything else,
No,
Representative
good,
Kraft?
thank you.
Hemmingson Jaeger, Representative Hemmingson Jaeger.
Thank you. So thank you for the presentation. Thank you for being here today. As someone who gets the privilege to represent both Ramsey and Washington counties, I'm just really excited to kind of see this innovative, forward-thinking approach. I also really appreciate the collaboration and extending it to outside of these two counties. And I'll just say I've been talking with the Woodbury Commissioner, Michelle Clausen, and really excited about the pilot program expanding to Woodbury. So just thank you for all of your work.
And last question, Representative Garofalo.
Thank you.
Oh,
Sorry.
What?
second to last. Go ahead, Representative.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, why wouldn't you just turn it into compost? Why this other stuff? Why the char? Why the RNG?
Yeah, so,
Mr. Keegan?
Madam Chair, Representative, composting is great. There's reasons to compost, and there's plenty of food waste, as we mentioned, to compost. The addition, the reason someone would do anaerobic digestion is you produce renewable natural gas. So both processes can produce a product. From composting, you can produce compost. From anaerobic digestion, you can produce biochar, that's the solids. But the additional benefit of anaerobic digestion is the production of renewable natural gas. But that does not mean that there won't also be composting. In fact, a project partner on this with us was Shakopee Mdewakanton Sioux Community. And they were a proposer because we're going to work jointly with them on feedstocks and on operations, and then also looking at incorporating the biochar into their compost products. So this will be in synergy with composting and not competing with composting.
Representative Garofalo.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and just for members of the committee, and certainly, I think it's all of ours dream and goal that we like the idea of turning trash into energy. Just environmentally, we all support that, but you take a look at this. We've got $100 million capital cost. We have 20-year operation costs of $155 million. So that's a commitment of $250 million, and the facility will produce 170,000 MMBTUs, which works out to about $400,000 worth of natural gas a year for a $255 million commitment. Now, I understand there's other ancillary benefits that come from that beyond just the energy produced, but that is that's some extraordinarily expensive natural gas, members. Thank you.
Representative Rarick.
Yeah, he actually asked a couple things I was going to ask, so I won't ask those things, which was, they talked about how expensive this was, and I don't know if we got a number exactly, is compared to natural gas, what's renewable natural gas from this? What is the cost difference? And I think Representative Garofalo kind of just did the math for us. I don't know if they have an actual number, but I'll let them look at that. I also wanted to know what happens when you have in the waste stream, it's mixed refuse that gets into the organics, which happens, I'm sure, all the time because people are not very careful. They're not careful with recycling. They're not careful with really anything. So what do you do when you get it with mixed waste?
Commissioner Myron.
Madam Chair, if I may respond, Representative Rarick, our agreement with DEMCON and the delivery of the food scraps that we deliver has a certain standard that has to be met. And our program uses compostable bags. The food scraps are placed within those compostable bags. And we have to meet those standards to be in compliance with the agreement that we have with DEMCON. So that's our responsibility. We take that seriously. The waste is contained in compostable bags so that we can sort them at the facility and at our other sites, and then deliver them to DEMCON under the conditions that I just described.
Representative Rarick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nope, I get that. I have little green compostable bags at my house, and I fill them up with my scraps, and I throw them in my garden, and I make new gardens every year. I get that part. My question is, when you have some consumer that just throws whatever in that bag, and it's not actually organics, then what happens at the facility site? Because once it's in the little bag, it's in the little bag, and I'm sure you're going to get things that shouldn't be in there.
Mr. Keegan.
Madam Chair, Representative, great question. That is one of the other benefits of anaerobic digestion is it's a little more tolerant of some of that other contamination that might get put in there, because you're exactly right. They're not going to do a perfect job. I think First and foremost, we have a very robust education program at DEMCON, and so does RNE, and we're out educating the community to do the best job they can. Beyond that, you are going to see some contamination in there, and the reason we have the ability to manage that more so than composting is because of that biochar process, and it can turn some of that contamination into biochar. That said, I always use the adage, garbage in, garbage out. We can't have just any kind of contamination in the organics. We need to work really hard on having high quality organics, but if somebody has a plastic bottle top or something in there, we can handle it through our process, whereas with composting, you're going to see that in your compost. So there is the ability to handle some of that, but we will be working very diligently to minimize any contamination in there. And
Follow up. Oh, it looks like Commissioner Reinhardt would like to comment as well.
I guess the other thing is, because this is something, it's for food scraps and it goes into the garbage, there's really no incentive to put something in there that you wouldn't put into, I mean, if it's garbage, why wouldn't you put it into your garbage? But but somebody will still probably do something and not realize what it is or whatever. But we also have testing that is done, because we can't go over, when we talk about the specifications, we can't go over a certain percentage of contaminants. And so there is testing that is done to know, and it's done randomly, I believe. I'm not an expert on the testing of it, but I do know that because we have that standard we have to meet, we have to know that it doesn't go beyond that, or it can't be accepted there. So there's testing that goes into that as well.
Representative Rarick.
Thank you. Last question. So you talked about the high temperatures destroying the PFAS, and I believe it's 1,200 degrees Fahrenheit is the level at which it's destroyed, because I had some conversations with the waste to energy facilities, and so Xcel Energy was just doing some testing. They spent quite a bit of money to test PFAS, and they're very excited because the incineration process actually destroys PFAS. So is that correct, that at about 1,200 degrees Fahrenheit, that's the magic number of when you're beginning to destroy PFAS? And that's just like the system with the waste to energy, it's also destroying PFAS? Because that's what Xcel Energy had told me about a week, maybe 2 weeks ago now.
Mr. Keegan.
Madam Chair, Representative, you've done your homework on PFAS, so that's good. It's a hot topic that everyone's talking about. I am not an expert on exactly the temperature, or I can't speak to that, but I can tell you that our temperature is 1,400 degrees and has a residence time that is sufficient to destroy PFAS. So apologize, I can't be a little bit more informed on the waste energy side of things, but that's on our technology. And Madam Chair, at some point I need to make a clarification on a comment earlier. Is this appropriate time?
Sure, go ahead.
Madam Chair, Commissioner, I wanted to, or Commissioner, I'm sorry.
Don't demote me.
Representative.
Oh.
All right, in full disclosure, I never do this.
Yeah.
So
You're doing
you got me
great.
nervous, all right? All right. Representative, my apologies. Just speaking to the financial aspect and the kind of the math, the back of the envelope math we were doing, this project is fully economically viable once we get the 30% tax credit from the federal government as part of the Inflation Reduction Act, and $35 million in grant money. There's no continual subsidies needed. We're looking under a lot of different rocks for that money, because that's a big amount, right? And we're looking everywhere we can. We're trying to get as much help as we can to get there. But once we get that, there's no additional subsidies. And when you look at the cost per MMBTU of gas, kind of getting down to what does this cost for gas, and is it all worth it type math. I was working with folks from CenterPoint, and we did some calculations earlier, and it's essentially around $15 to $20 per MMBTU on a 20-year life of the project. That's taking $100 million and taking 170,000 MMBTU per year over 20 years and dividing that out. I'm not able to do that in my head right now, but we did it earlier, and it was around $15 or $20 per MMBTU.
Next, we had actually two more blasts. Representative Ream.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Hollins, for bringing this forward. I, too, love composting, so this is a fun topic. But I do have a question about I don't know how to say it, the heat treatment process, the pyrolysis. What energy are you using to create that high 1,200 degree Fahrenheit temperature? Are you using fossil fuels, or are you using renewable energy? Could you talk a little bit about that?
Mr. Keegan.
Absolutely. Madam Chair, Representative, the pyrolysis unit or gasification unit that makes the biochar, I like to call it a biochar process, it has basically the initial startup, if you were to start it up cold right now, would use natural gas to just start it, but then it is self-sustaining. So it stays running and it runs off its own. It produces enough what they call syngas. It's the gas that's driven off of the digestate that's in there. That is what fuels the heat back into it. So it's self-sustaining. So it doesn't need any other natural gas or fossil natural gas or renewable natural gas after startup. Now, once a year, you might shut this down for maintenance, clean it out, and then you would have to start it up again. But just that startup period, which is a matter of hours. Otherwise, it's self-sustaining with the gas that's produced that comes off of the digestate in the process.
Any follow-up, Representative Ream? Last question, Representative Hornstein. He
Thank
started
you
us out
for
and he's
being-
finishing us out.
Thank you for being patient, Madam Chair.
Yes.
I just have to sort of push back a little on all this cheerleading for garbage incineration. I mean, you know, and I am pulling a Representative Rarick here because she's very good at doing this. In the midst of the debate, she looks up studies, you know, on the spot just to sort of refute things.
I knew that before I came in.
Yeah, and
Sorry.
okay, good. Well, you know, there are many studies that show that incineration, in fact, may spread, not break down PFAS, including one in New York State a few years ago. And so I just want to remind folks, it's also an expensive way to deal with waste management. We have the ash that has to be landfilled. Half of the waste stream, I think, can be recycled. So, you know, I just a little slowing down on the cheerleading here. I think we do have to focus on organics, composting, which we in the legislature actually raised in the overall waste hierarchy. And so if we can focus on that, do it in a way that Representative Kraft mentioned. There are many ways to do anaerobic digestion, some more environmentally responsible than others. But I do want to say, Madam Chair, this is a good idea, and I support it, and I hope we can help you here at the legislature.
Thank you, Representative Hornstein. And I think we're going to go to Representative Hollins for closing remark. Commissioner Reinhardt, it looks like you're really wanting
I'm
to make.
sorry, I
Yes,
just.
you go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Representative Hornstein. This is not an incinerator, it's actually, okay, I just wanted to make sure that was clear to everyone.
Response,
Thank you for that
Representative
clarification. Any closing remarks, Representative Hollins?
Thank you for the conversation. Thank you, committee and chair, for hearing the bill. Thank you to the testifiers that handled all of the technical stuff that I didn't have to do. I appreciate that, and I hope that we can earn your support. Thank you.
Representative Hollins renews her motion that House File 4938 be laid over. The bill is laid over.